So good afternoon, everyone. We're here today to talk about leveraging military leaders and how veterans on your board and in your C-suite can improve corporate governance. But before we kick that off, Liz, I think, wanted to close out a comment on that last panel.
Hey, so my name is Liz Vlad. I am a proud card-carrying member of being an E4 Mafia member. So I originally was a private. When I was a private, I was learning that Army actually started with an A and not an R. But when I became an E4, I then received a direct commission after a while. When I retired as an O4, like I said. But one day I had my former employee come up to me who used to run the Thunderbirds in the Air Force. And he retired as an 06. And he told me one day, if I ever repeated this, he would be mad at me. He was like, Liz, you were the best leader that I ever had in the outside of the military and inside the military. But if I ever told anybody that a Army private was the best leader that I ever had, I'd be mad. So don't take anything that any of these people have said lightly, because you will find some of the best people and you're missing out if you don't take advantage of people and the leadership skills that they develop at those ages.
Thank you so much. So as I said, we're going to discuss improving corporate governance by ensuring that veterans are on your board or in your C-suite. So I'm going to go ahead and start with some brief introductions. My name is TJ Martin. I'm the Senior Military Recruiting Program Manager for USIC, United States Infrastructure Company. I am a 25-year Army veteran, and because I've got USAREC up here, I'm happily retired. I saw the retiree recall memo, not an option. So that's me. Go ahead and we'll start with Liz.
All right, so I'm Liz Vlad. I'm a retired Army veteran. I got out, medically retired 18 years, 9 months, did 13 combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Djibouti. And I'm missing a country, but I don't remember which one it is off the top of my head. I currently own my own baseball agency, and I also am a board member for a nonprofit called K9 Cavalry. Cavalry starts with a K, and what K9K does is provide 100% free service dog training for any service-connected veteran. What's different about K9K is it does not train a dog and give it to you. It helps you do the train the trainer so that you can make your own custom service dog. And that's Rocky, obviously. I got a service dog. Because like someone said earlier, the hardest thing somebody can ever do is say, hey, look, I'm a female disabled combat veteran.
I'm Brian Anderson. I'm a B-52 pilot that reinvented myself into the nonprofit world. I work with Military Officers Association America, and that name works against us having officers actually in that. We're 360,000 strong, but we're an association of officers, but not about officers. Our programs are open to all ranks across the board: Guard, Reserve, military spouses, and surviving spouses. So don't think that just because I'm from the Military Officers Association America that we don't apply to that. And we help not only on the advocacy efforts of military pay, compensation, and benefits, but we also help transitioning service members, veterans that are seeking career advancement, and then also to the military spouse community to find not only the right job, but to find that passion and purpose that they're looking for in their civilian career.
How's everybody doing? My name is Sergeant Major Scott Lisinski. Address the elephant in the room. I'm currently in the military. I'm still serving. I have 20 months left until I start moving into your guys' realm. And I just want to say initially, it's a complete, like, it's crazy for me to see how many recruiters are in this room. And I always assumed that, like, aren't recruiting meant military. We're going to recruit, you know, when you put that together, people jump to the word military, you know? And I've been recruiting for 18 years for the Army. 18 years I've been doing this job. And again, I thought it was great to see so many people out there that are doing this. Part of the New York City Recruiting Battalion. Yeah, happy to be here.
All right, it's hard to follow you guys. I don't know why they put me on the end down here, but my name is Torrey Garrison. I'm Vice President of EHS and Leadership Development for Performance Contractors. I'm also a major in the United States Air Force Reserve based in Yokota, Japan. So quite a little ways from here, especially since I live in Alabama. So really a strange movement here. But, you know, I'm also prior service Coast Guard. And so we've almost hit all the branches up here. So I'm just super excited about being here. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. So before we kick this off, I'm going to give a little bit of background information on our topic areas. So when we see corporate governance, right, that's a very broad scope, but at its core, corporate governance refers to a system of rules, practices, and processes by which a company is directed and controlled. It encompasses relationships among various stakeholders, such as the shareholders, management, employees, customers, suppliers, and the community at large. The goal of corporate governance is to manage the business to maximize long-term value while safeguarding the interest of stakeholders. So that's the corporate governance that we're gonna try and talk through today. So opening question here, and I know we've had some discussion on this. What are some of the specific ways that you've seen veterans in C-suite roles impact corporate governance?
That's a great question. And first of all, I really appreciated and had a lot of fun with the officer bashing on the session before. Especially as a major, I felt really at home. But so one thing that I think that's really important is the structure part that we bring from the military into the C-suite. I use different things with the other vice presidents or our CEO. Like I'll send him an email and I'll state, I'd like to have a meeting. Here's what I want to discuss. That's just straight what we do in the military. This is what we're going to discuss. It keeps us on track. It keeps a little bit of structure. I'll throw a bluff on an email. At the beginning of an email, it just blows their mind, which opens up a question. I received that question back. At least if I send an email out to 1,000 people, I'll get 100 questions on what's bluff, and it opens up a conversation of bottom line up front, which again, and the next time I see an email from them, they'll throw a bluff on the beginning. So I believe structure is a really big thing that military personnel can bring to the C-suite.
Thank you.
Not being in the C-suite, currently in the military, structure is definitely there too. I think I couldn't agree with you more. That structure, but I also believe that it's the execution part as well, or being able to one of the words I use is flexecute, being able to take things on the run and execute with flexibility is what it is. So my commander will have a mission, set job, whatever it may be. And then my job is to get with my commander as a senior enlisted advisor, as a non-commissioned officer. So I'm going to more or less do like a Lean Six Sigma type mentality of how can I get this done effectively? How can I get this done where I'm maximizing or exploiting my soldiers' skill sets? And how am I able to utilize their time in the right manner is what it is. So structure, things that we call like an SOP, a standard operating procedure, building that with your commander. These things are things that we do in the military that I think would be at a corporate level for you guys.
Go ahead.
And even though corporate level is all about, as we know, profit and loss, it's not that much different in the military community because we have a bottom line too. It's training, it's readiness, and it's warfighting capability. And at the end of the day, you need to make sure that your people are trained, that you have the resources that are in place, that you go out and as you do train that, you are making sure that you are ready by doing that, and then capturing the lessons learned of what needs to be done, and then being ready to execute, just as in the corporate world goes quarterly to quarter and annual to annual. That battle rhythm also exists in the military as well. The other thing, and we've talked about it across almost all the other panels since I've been here, is veterans have a unique ability to be able to take something and look at it from a broad perspective. On any given day, they're at the strategic level determining what needs to be done, but they're also at the operational, again, making it happen. And as we just talked about in the last panel, down at that tactical level, actually being the doers of making it happen on any given day, going through all three of those. And that's not that much different than what you have in the C-level suites, but you also have on some of the board opportunities that are out there as well.
Thank you.
So now that these guys have told you the benefits of having them in the C-suite, so I'm going to give you the example of how this actually comes to fruition. So obviously, to become a certified baseball agent, you have to pass a test by the MLB Players Association. So 99.9% of baseball agents are actually lawyers. In order to sit for the exam, it is 3,000 pages worth of baseball regulations regarding baseball rules, the rules with agents, the rules with drug enforcement policies, and all kinds of different doctrine. So I passed the exam on my first try. The MLB PA called me afterwards and said, how did you do this? Because you're the first person that's not a lawyer to pass this test. So literally by going through this, it was my ability to work at that strategic operation and tactical level because I could understand the strategy and look at all of these different things and I could understand how doctrine and joint doctrine is written with the whole Roman numeral paragraph 2 ABC 13E, which is mainly legal doctrine or military doctrine. And so the test was, hey, your player X, Y, and Z happened. You had to figure out based upon what had happened, what clause they fell into. But because we are trained to figure out all that different strategy and we can analyze, we can then say, oh, okay, because this has happened, this now is what we are applying. So now this is what occurred. So when I had to pick choice C or whatever the answer was to the question, it became second nature because I had just spent 18 years figuring it out because that's what I did for the military. And just because it happens to be baseball for me doesn't mean whatever somebody other veteran picks, they're going to put the same time and effort in for their career as well.
Thank you, guys. So as we look at managing that corporate governance, right, and using those experiences from veterans and why they're valuable in the C-suite, looking at some data points, anywhere between 8.5% to 12%, multiple reports, so don't quote me on the numbers, but somewhere between 8.5% and 12% of S&P 500 C-suite are military affiliated or veterans. So taking that into consideration, what do you guys think? Does there seem to be a lack of veteran leadership in C-suites? Do we think that there should be, I don't know, I'm curious, what would you think? Should we see that grow out? Should we expect more veterans in C-suite leadership?
Yeah, I don't know why you're asking me. I'm just kidding. It's really, we were talking. Thank you. So Mike Favre is here as our military workforce development coordinator for our company. And we were talking about this today, and we were talking about, you guys mentioned it on the session before, that many of our senior, especially senior officers, want to come into a position equivalent to what they were in the military. And it's not going to happen. They were mentioning earlier, like, would you put someone in some type of joint program overseas out of one of our companies? And I'm like, no way would I ever do that. But so I think what we're really having to focus in on is those veterans that are already working for you that have some experience to bring those into the C-suite. Very rarely are you going to hire someone at any level, military and non-military, into the C-suite. So you're bringing them from within your company. So is there a lack of military personnel or veterans in C-suite? Absolutely, there are. But we need to approach this a little bit different. I don't know if it was last session or maybe a couple sessions ago. We were talking about expectations. It was last session. You guys were talking about expectations when you go to hire someone to bring somebody into your company. That is what will drive it. The expectations, and let them understand exactly what's expected of them and what you can expect from our company. One of the questions that are not asked when you're interviewing in a company is, what are you looking for? Like, I want to tell you what our company needs. This is our needs. Do you fit my needs? But when you turn it around and say, what are you looking for? What is your need? I think that's where we can put more veterans into positions that will eventually lead to a C-suite position.
I think one of the things that you mentioned there is that even myself, like with limited time left in the military and talking with my peers and my peer group, and understand that we're leaving the military, especially at a certain level, like, well, this is owed to me. Like, I'm going to walk into these jobs, these corporate jobs that, I have all this experience. Why shouldn't I? You may have all the experience in the Army, but what do you have in the corporate field? I know me personally, I am a very direct leader. I want it done. I'm like, go execute. That's it. Leaving the military, I'm assuming in your guys' realm, that's not the case. I got to be like, hey, please, and yeah, I mean, I'm like, my wife tells me this all the time with her job. Like, you really got to butter someone up to tell them they're doing a poor job. And I'm like, no, go execute. You're failing. Move on, and that's me, and I have to somehow reel that in as I transition into my next career.
Scott, your expectation is not wrong.
Hey, so when are you available? 20 months?
20 months. I'm taking offers, everyone. I'm just kidding.
And I'm going to pull from some of the previous panels. I think one of the biggest challenges is actually diversity in the C-level suite, but also diversity amongst the boards. Oftentimes, when we talked about in the last one, we think of flag and general officers. yes, there may be very appropriate positions for them in corporate government, possibly in big defense, private sector type companies, in areas to where those skill sets are maybe inherently required. Also, too, many of us in here are familiar with the nonprofit community. Well, our nonprofit boards are often littered with military and veteran type people, but it's only because that's what we're doing. And so therefore we have more people in that, and you may want to look for diversity the other way, the non-veterans. I was talking to Scott from Mass Mutual, who's a great veteran advocate out there at lunch. Great example of somebody who could provide you a non-veteran diversity that's actually going to be out there. So again, the more ways that we can incorporate veterans across the board, across all the industries and sectors. This morning, we talked about the academia community. That is ripe for having more veteran people that are actually within that. So again, I think it's how we look at it. I can't necessarily say that we need more or less. I think just looking across the full spectrum of industries and sectors. And when that happens, then what do? We talked quite a bit about networking before, or bringing that. Once you have people in those positions, then they're going to tend to bring others with them, that therefore we can continue to grow and expand in that area.
The biggest thing that I tend to notice is it all comes down to resume writing and translation skills. And we are bad on both sides of the house. So veterans, we can't write what we did in the military into corporate speak, and corporations can't write what they need in military speak. So at the end of the day, what we need is Google Translate for veterans to corporations and vice versa, just like I do with all of my athletes that don't speak the same language as I do. So one of my roles that I have at K9K, I worked in a joint environment. So I dealt with all the different services, and I know the Marine said crayons taste like purple on the last one. And we all know Air Force people are always on the golf course. But because I worked with a bunch of different branches, they have me in a role as the command OIC for K9K, because part of it is you have to manage different personalities. And different branches of service have different personalities. You could be a very direct leader where you're going to do the NCO finger point, and that's how you want somebody to execute. Or you could be somebody like me, who I just want to give you a left and right limit, and I don't want to hold your hand. I want to give you a task, be like, hey, accomplish it by this, and I want it to be done. So it all comes down to having the ability to translate these different skills and understand different personalities. But none of us do a good job of translating what we all know and think in our own minds. And then on top of that, not being able to translate it, we definitely don't have the ability to communicate it. So it all comes down to a translation and communication problem for all of us.
No, it's a good point.
Hey, can I add one thing?
Yeah.
Real quickly. I think one group of people that we tend to overlook is veteran spouses. And the reason why I want to bring that up is that, so if you haven't noticed yet, I'm a chaplain. Okay. So there you go. Whatever. I'm sure you got some mean comments about it, but I'm just joking. Not really.
Striking mean comments.
I once was asked to do a funeral for a military spouse, right? And the family came to me and said, you know, why is a military chaplain at a military spouse's funeral? And I said, because we look at you as if you're a military member as well. So hey, my wife's a physician, and I've woke up in the middle of the night quoting things that she talks about because I hear it all the time. So do you think the veterans have gone through just as much? The spouses are there as well. So don't overlook military spouses in your C-suite.
Absolutely. And that brings me to the point, I think it was Jared Lyons earlier who mentioned, and it's like the easiest thing, and it just didn't dawn on me. If you've got veterans in your C-suite or military spouses in your C-suite, put it in their bio, right? I mean, that should just be an automatic, but it's such an easy thing that I think often gets overlooked. So if you're watching online, or if you're in this room and you've got C-suite veterans or spouses, please include that in the bio. I think that's just such a powerful tool to be able to utilize in that governance aspect. All right. So as we're looking at time moving through here, in corporate America, C-suite leaders aren't just responsible for the P&L, as Brian mentioned. They're also responsible for culture, right? And when we think about governance and we talk about the SOPs, the practices, the processes, all of those things tie into the corporate governance. But the other thing that C-suite's responsible for is culture. how can veterans in the C-suite help shape culture?
There's no culture like a military culture. There just isn't. And I know that we can try to move into different areas, but you know, it goes back to a story that I heard one time, and I'm sorry to do this, but you know, what do military personnel do when there's a scorpion in the tent? The Marine Corps kills the scorpions. The Army has to go report to the CO and ask them what the next direction is. The Air Force is wondering why there's a tent in my hotel room. And the Navy's like, well, what's a scorpion and what's a tent? So when I look at that, I'm thinking the culture is this. The culture is this. We're going to go after each other constantly. I mean, it's pretty bad sometimes, but when it's time to work, it's time to work. And that's the culture that you can bring into the C-suite or into your organization at all. It's like, we can be friends, but that level of hierarchy, the chain of command is still there. So when it's go time, we go fall back into what we're supposed to do and do the job that you're tasked to do. I think that's the culture that we can bring into it, is that we can be friends, we can be at each other and have fun, but when it's time to go, it's time to go. One of the things that we brought into our company was a go-no-go program. And people are like, what? Why would you use that? Like, I'm like, you don't understand. It's that simple. It's that simple. We either go or it's a no-go. And based off the information that we have, we made a decision to go or no go, and that's exactly what we do in the military.
When I think of culture, like I've been at my recruiting battalion for about 5 months now, and me and my commander have done like bent over backwards to make sure that the culture is where it needs to be. And that's what made us one of the top recruiting battalions in all of USAREC right now, because of the culture of New York City and the soldiers. And I think part of that, and I mentioned earlier my knife hand, and I didn't want to come across as that, but we do a really good job of providing what the Army calls mission command. Mission command is basically using your command and control to delegate that to lower down on the spot decision making. You know, not micromanaging, but being able to like provide those left and right limits to that soldier or that officer, but also provide them with, hey, you know, run with it. If you have an idea, you know, there's no such thing as a bad idea. You know, if you want to try, especially in recruiting with the ever-changing world in recruiting, when it coming out of COVID and all different things, hey, try it. Or the person that says we did that long ago, it didn't work. Well, try it now, you know? But we in my command give all of our subordinate leaders the autonomy to go out and be leaders. And I think we create a culture of developing leaders to be leaders is what it is. And I think that's a big part of it. And I think that would really help corporate America.
And before diversity and inclusion was debated inside the boardrooms about how valuable that was, it was already occurring in the military, because we knew it took everybody on that team to accomplish whatever that mission was going to be. And so diversity, inclusion, being part of a team, being in that situation, I think is just ingrained into our DNA. And those are things that we can bring again into those corporate structures and into the board. And if you have a service disabled veteran, that even helps in other areas as well too, for where you're looking for some of those types of things for what your culture may be within your particular organization.
If you need to make a change to your corporate culture, all you have to do is literally find the veteran that has the personality of how you want it to go. Because there is some veteran that has the exact personality that can somehow make it be influenced. It may not necessarily be the good thing or the right thing, but there is somebody who can come in and make that company change the culture, whether you like it or not.
That's a good point. I'm going to recap that though, because I think we hit on a lot of points, and I just want to make sure that as an audience, we're all taking this away. The corporate culture, right? What veterans bring, to your point, Tori, focused efforts, to your point, autonomous leadership, the ability to, accept those left and right limits and run with the ball. And then to your guys' points here, Brian, Liz, the diversity, right? Not just the diversity of people, but the diversity of thought and the openness to those diverse ideas, because the world that we come from as veterans, as senior leaders in the military, it's all different ideas have the opportunity, right? And usually the best ideas went out. So I think that was a great recap on that one. Are there other points that you guys want to talk about as we deal with governance and we think through the strategic operations of C-suites in America?
I think something that we don't like to talk about is that every veteran's not the best position for your company. They're also not. Mike Favre and I, we deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Is that because you're a veteran, we want to hire you. Like, I mean, we're getting at it, right? We want to hire veterans. We're serious about it, but that doesn't mean they're a great fit. And I think when you're coming out of the military, you are already ingrained and you have a culture of you have a set skill and there's some things that kind of bind you in. But what sometimes we have to do is unfold that onion a little bit, like get them back to what did you got put into an MOS because that's what the score you made, or you got put there because that's the only thing that was open. What were you wanting to do before you got into that? Like what are some of the other ideas that you have, and start learning about these ladies and gentlemen, where we can put them in positions that are going to be effective for our company. At the end of the day, we're all trying to make money. We're all trying to be successful, and we can provide that to our veterans. What I would encourage us to do as kind of a closing point for me is just give that veteran an extra look. Just because they don't exactly fit it, just think about, is there another way that you can mold that into a position that could be helpful? And you may be surprised on how they give back to you more than you even thought you gave to them. So, not only looking at our veterans, but looking at our spouses, looking at their families, all of them have a set skill that you're only taught if you're in the heat. So again, that's what I would give back to you.
That's a great point. And I think some advice maybe for you guys, for someone, again, not in the corporate world, but in my experience, I've had really good leaders and I've had really bad leaders. So don't let a rank on a shoulder tell you that this person is qualified to lead other people. I really think that's important. And I think when it comes to the word leadership, I always use this saying when I talk to my soldiers, is that what is your brand of vodka? What is your cocktail, that secret sauce that you've developed over the years? Well, it's a little bit of this leader that I took away. There's a little bit of this leader that I don't want nothing to do with, but I'm going to use that in the future not to do what he or she did to make me feel that way. And you mix it all together and you create this like form of leadership that becomes your brand. It becomes the person you are. And those are the leaders that you should be looking for, and especially in the C-suite, that are going to be in charge of other people. Not everybody's qualified to do the things that we do, but they just end up there with pure luck. So just be cautious of that.
I told you I was going to steal from the other panels because I think there's been so many great thoughts that really have kind of woven across the theme. But when we're talking about corporate and board governance, I'm going to steal a little bit from what Jared talked about, and that is being and finding veterans where they're at. You are probably most likely going to have to go find them because they're probably not going to come looking for you. And the example I use is we go across the country helping transitioning service members. I use the example of CarMax. I got a great job at CarMax. Any transitioning service interested? Anybody? Going once, going twice. Got a job at CarMax. Anybody want it? And no one makes eye contact with me. Why? Because they think the guy in the suit's talking about going out and selling used cars. And I have to explain to them that CarMax is a Fortune 500 company that is in logistics, transportation movement, global supply chain. The list goes on and on and on. And I was talking about regional director positions, and I was talking about corporate headquarters jobs. And they look at me and go, well, I'm interested in that now all of a sudden. But they weren't interested because they thought CarMax is about selling cars. And many of you in here, when I saw the titles of where you work, I've been in this business a long time, and I don't know where half of you all work. And so you are going to have to go out there and find them where they're at, because they're not going to come knocking on your door, because we've been in the military sometimes 10, 15, 20 years, and we may not have name recognition for who you are in that particular world. So it goes back again to that recruiting and meeting them where they're at.
Absolutely.
All right. So if by now you haven't decided you're hiring a veteran, clearly you're wrong. But so part of the thing that you're going to have to deal with now that you've going to hire veterans is you may see that the veteran's not going to be like the typical employee that you're going to hire. So one thing that you'll go through is, I know that anytime I came in and took over command, the first thing they tell you is observe for 30 days before you come in and try to change anything. So when you do have a veteran that you've hired, they're going to probably come in and they're going to sit in your meeting and they're just going to observe, and they're not going to want to tell you their ideas and things like that. Or if you have somebody like me who, if you would have seen me 5 years ago, there is zero chance you would have had me sitting up here on a stage I wouldn't even sit and talk to people at my same table. So if you do hire a veteran and you see them sitting and being very quiet, and because it's a group setting, you might want to just grab them and sit to them off to the side and be like, hey, what kind of ideas do you have? Because it may be just one of those things where it's a little bit of some PTSD and some anxiety going through them, and they have great ideas in their heads, but it's a little bit of a thing for them of speaking up in group settings. Just, you got to fight through that and get them out of their shells. But once you get them out of their shells, they won't shut up, just like me.
Thanks. All right, I think we've got a few minutes for questions. Love to take a couple of questions from the field here. We did that good a job. I'm impressed with this panel. It's amazing. Oh, got one over here.
Never fails that the chaplain tells a story. Excellent work. Yeah, there's barely cultural competency. By the way, I work in the nonprofit sector.
Okay.
Right. My entire business is around mental health, suicide prevention, and employment to tackle those ideations. Right. To talk to Colonel Bryan's point on like the board, the C-suite, everything. Something that we've actually began to adopt is Gold Star families.
Mm-hmm.
They're often overlooked, and they bring a lot of insight to the table of what that side of the realm looks like, right? I know we talk about the active duty, the veterans, and the immediate family, spouse, everything. But sometimes even the Gold Star families have a lot of insight into, what could be the potential for upbringing. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That's a very good point.
Oh, I saw you.
Yeah,
It's
I'm like,
quick.
I got this.
It's between you and I.
So a little bit of history of K9 Cavalry. Ranger is the original service dog with K9 Cavalry. He was trained based upon 2 Gold Star families donating the funding for Ranger to get served or trained as a service dog. Based upon what Dan, the founder, who is a Air Force veteran, learned by getting his first service dog, he started the nonprofit. The board is a mix of civilians and veterans. We have 24 volunteers and 98% of us are veterans, but it all started because 2 Gold Star families wanted to pay it forward and help somebody so that they didn't have another veteran and another veteran's family end up being in a Gold Star family. So that's what part of what K9 Cavalry does, is to try and work with the mental health.
That's great. So just real quick, a little interaction here. How many companies in here have someone designated for their military workforce? Okay, that's a really good, that's just interesting to see because what we found out is that when we didn't have someone that was pressing or leaning into that we were missing opportunities like what you were saying. We were missing opportunities to have those days for our employees, not only our employees, but our spouses as well, our veterans, and that we were missing those types of opportunities. So I would encourage you to try to get someone, even if it's someone that you already have on your team, to designate it to look after those veterans or hiring veterans. I think not that we're not in some category where we deserve more. That's not the point. The point is you'd be surprised on how much our veterans care that we do events for veterans, right? And then they go talk to other veterans, and then it starts snowballing and gives us more opportunity. That being said, if any of you would ever like to discuss any of these topics with me afterwards, I'd love to give you a card and let's kind of break some bread and sharpen some iron on that. So.
Speaking of cards, I'm sitting in a room full of recruiters. If anyone is interested in joining the Army or knows someone that wants to join the Army, please let me know. I'm surprised no one's even asked.
Mistakes. We all make mistakes sometimes. That's true.
Well, if Sergeant Major's going to do that, if anyone has any baseball players and needs representation, I mean.
Let me just piggyback,
So I'm going to go back to what we were just talking about with the Gold Star families. And that's just one of a multitude of examples of those organizations that we can give back to through corporate governance, right? And so by having veterans in that C-suite on your board or in the ability to help shape your corporate governance, when we look at those long-term value-added positions those positions exist for, we always look at corporate giving and what we can do, right? And by adding one, maybe two veterans to that board or to that C-suite, you're able to expose the rest of the company to all of these wonderful nonprofit or well-deserving tied to veteran communities. And so thanks for bringing that up. That's amazing. Questions, concerns, thoughts? Nope. All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to close out this panel. Thank you guys for your time. And thanks, Vets in Texas.